Hello and welcome to Life with Francie podcast, a place where you will find all types of conversation, mental health, self-love, self-care, trauma, hobbies, and more. With this podcast, I want to create a community where we support one another to get to the next level in personal and business life. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Now, let's get the show started. On today's episode, I have the pleasure to talk to Zane, and he is a mental health advocate, disability advocate, queer rights activist, entrepreneur, and a positive change maker. I just can't wait to have a conversation with him. So let's welcome Zane. So tell us, what is life with you?
Well, right now I would say I'm a recent graduate. So I received my Bachelor of Science in Communication, and I worked in like two roles, like interning at General Motors and then doing a consultant kind of opportunity. And then right now I'm currently working at National Geographic Society. So that has been pretty exciting. I started 3 weeks ago, and I'm just learning as much as I can about communications, internal communications, and all that.
I love that. Congratulations. That's
Thank you.
great. I am so excited. So yeah, I found you through Podmatch, an amazing community for podcasters and podcast guests. And tell us a little bit about your story.
Yeah, I usually tell my mental health journey from how it kind of was at the beginning, which for me going back was mental health journey kind of traveled to probably by the time I was 4 or 5, probably the earliest I can probably imagine. I can't really pinpoint a specific time where I could really identify my mental health challenges, but I remember it being from a very young age. I was pretty hypersensitive, depressed, had anger. So, I was kind of fortunate that even though I experienced those things, that my family was well aware and had extensive knowledge about mental health. And they were not psychologists though either. They were just people who knew about it, especially from personal experience, or, people in my family who have experienced mental health, which every family has. So, I mean, that's what I think. I think every family has at least some sort of case or understanding of mental health in the family, and it really depends on how the family reacts and it treats it and
Mhm.
supports them. So just because every family experiences it doesn't mean that they're going to take their child to a psychologist or support them or research more about it. So every family is different. So that was kind of like my journey. I saw a psychologist for several years, like towards the end of towards the end of elementary school to the end of high school. And that's where I learned professionally, the professional aspects of how to deal with your mental health, how to like manage your emotions, how to set boundaries, how to take a step away when things become overwhelming, which I think a lot of times we forget to do. I feel like sometimes when we feel overwhelmed, we stay in that overwhelming state and we don't move away. And of course, when you do that, it gets more overwhelming, and you're not really doing yourself any favors by staying in that position. I understand like maybe there are places where you can't just walk away, but the ones where you can, you do have that power. I think it's sometimes best to just walk away or set a boundary, for yourself and maybe the people around you. And I think that setting boundaries is a very important key. I think a lot of people's issues can stem from setting boundaries. Not
Yeah.
all, of course, but I think a lot. I think a lot of people fear setting boundaries because I think setting boundaries is a scary thing because I feel like the inherent moment where you set a boundary, you are going to upset someone unless you're just setting a boundary for yourself. But I think if you're setting a boundary from someone else, or you want to spend more time with yourself and you have to like spend less time with others, I feel like setting a boundary between yourself and other people, you will probably upset people because people are not used to having boundaries like that. I feel like we live in a world where it's not normalized to set boundaries. So it can be upsetting for people.
100%.
And it can be upsetting for people. It's like, well, maybe they didn't do anything or maybe they did, but at the end of the day, it's about yourself and what you can handle and what's going to help your longevity, or your wellness, emotional longevity. So I think people have to look out for themselves. And also we should respect people's boundaries and what they're requesting, because when someone sets a boundary, I wouldn't take it personal. I know it's hard to, but it's like they're setting a boundary because this is what they personally need and it's what they personally want. And it's what is going to help them, feel better about themselves or make space for themselves. So I think that we need to be very mindful of people's boundaries and not kind of dehumanize people who set boundaries. So I feel like we do, in a way, not like completely dehumanize or demoralize, but we somewhat kind of we don't embrace it as much as we should. And again, if you're going to antagonize someone who wants to set boundaries, just think about what you're doing. They might want to set more boundaries from you because you're doing that. So again, you have to really kind of think about what it is that they're doing and what they want and kind of respect that. Yeah, I hope that makes sense.
Oh yeah, no, 100%. As for me, I didn't learn how to set boundaries till my 30s. So I've been working on it for like 5-6 years now. I come from a huge family, Hispanic. I'm Puerto Rican. And boundaries, please, what's that?
Yeah.
When it comes to Hispanic family. I just came from this is recorded in December, and I just came from Puerto Rico on vacation. And like when your family is your neighbors, there's no boundaries, there's no limits, and then if you set it, you will have family members upset. So that's why, and my mom like taught me to like avoid things and problems and things like that. But now I went back as an adult, and it felt nice to be respected, by my uncles, my aunts and uncles, like seeing me as a grown up, because usually it was like I say I'm I'm an adult in the United States, but I'm a child in Puerto Rico. So yeah, I love that you bring out boundaries, because some people don't know that they can set it. Others is harder because it's family or it's their partner or things like that. But it's as simple as just saying like, no, today I just want to stay in. I want to take a mental health day. That's okay.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's important to do that. And I am not how I say this, I'm still experiencing it myself, learning how to set boundaries. I don't think it's ever easy. I think the moment people learn how to set boundaries, it kind of gets easier with time and practice and actually doing it. But I feel like it's always going to be hard depending on your circumstances. Whoever you're around, it's like you have to start over. So even though you've set boundaries before, it's like, oh, I don't know how they're going to react. And I feel like it's a sad thing that we have to think about how people are going to react, and not we can't focus on ourselves wholly, because we have to think about how others are going to perceive us and what the reaction is going to be. And so sometimes it's hard for people to set boundaries, like you said, for certain reasons. So yeah.
And tell us a little bit more about your job and your job.
Yeah, it was exciting because I was looking for a position like that, because I've always been drawn to storytelling and stories, and I didn't kind of know that communication was a potential career path. I really didn't think about it that much. So I had a mentor in university where they kind of taught me about communication and how you can actually create a career out of it, which was really cool. Because again, a lot of stuff that I was doing in university kind of applied to the stuff you were doing in communication, but I never realized I was doing that, which I think is something we don't teach people. Is like, sometimes people find passion in other areas. It may not seem like a career path, but the stuff that they're doing can be applied to a certain career, and people kind of get stuck, and people kind of they feel pigeon-toed in what careers they're looking for. And they're not thinking about the scope of, like, there are millions of things you can do potentially. So after that, I did several internships in communication, and I really appreciated the internal communication work, because it's like I think it's kind of fun, where you're kind of communicating all the stuff that's happening inside the company internally, and then you can highlight employees, you can highlight DEI. So there's a lot of stuff that comes with internal comms I think is kind of special and kind of keeps the company grounded. and on the same page, which I think is incredibly important. And of course, you're working with employees and different stakeholders inside the company, which I think that employees are the most important stakeholders. I know a lot of people think it's the customers that are the most important audience, which it makes sense to make money. But again, how are you going to sell a product if you don't have employees? So again, at the end of the day, employees, I think, are the most important audience you need to kind of work with and engage with. So yeah, I was looking for different positions in internal comms, and a lot of them were looking for like a lot of years of experience, but I found this position at Nat Geo Society where it was like they only wanted 1 to 2 years, and the stuff in the job description was really interesting, like planning internal events, newsletters, all that stuff. So I decided to apply, and I didn't know anyone. I didn't have a network at Nat Geo or Nat Geo Society. So it was a little bit of a gamble because I didn't know anyone there, and it kind of helps when you can get your foot in the door by knowing someone, but I didn't. Lucky enough that my work spoke for itself, and all the positions that I did and all the hours I expended finally paid off. So it's actually my first job, like not job like in entirety, but first job, full-time, entry-level, postgraduate, because I've had several jobs, several internships, but this is my first actual like full-time getting in my career, getting my foot in the door, rather than interning or working for a position that doesn't align with my career. So yeah, and I kind of explain what I do. Like I said, internal events, newsletters, working with employees, so stuff like that, exciting stuff.
I love it. That's amazing. I'm so happy for you.
Thank you.
So yeah, what else do you want us to discuss?
Sure. I mean, I attended I don't know if you saw this, but I attended the Mental Health Youth Action Forum, which was this mental health forum at the White House. So
Oh, wow.
I discovered the forum in around November of 2021. This was the first time that they were doing something like this. I mean, it was specifically marketed as the first ever Mental Health Youth Action Forum. And I think that of course, there's been several mental health youth forums, but they're talking about is hosted by MTV, and it was actually taking place at the White House. So that's what I mean by first ever, because I don't think the White House has ever catered an event that spoke to youth mental health. I don't think so. It's what it sounded like. And it was really exciting to see, especially immediately when you see a company with such a reputation like MTV. And as we know, media sometimes isn't the best at reporting mental health. A lot of the times they don't really tell the full story, or mental health can be used as an excuse, or people are vilified for having mental health conditions. So very interesting stories come out of the mainstream media about mental health, and it never feels like it's the full story, unfortunately. So it was nice that, and I'm not saying MTV did that. I don't know much about MTV, but just in general, mainstream media. So it was nice that MTV was doing something like this. And they were also partnering with like 19 nonprofits of mental health nonprofits, like National Alliance on Mental Illness, Active Minds, Jet Foundation. I'm pretty sure like the Trevor Project. So again, big mental health organizations. So I knew that this had weight to it. Not just from the White House and MTV, but because I knew about these organizations and I knew about the work that they were doing. And if they were partnering, I knew that this event was going to lead to some really great stuff. So, I decided to apply, and I applied in December of 2021. And it was a brief application, but, luckily I heard back like the next month that I was a semifinalist. So there was one more step, and I had to submit another application. And these applications were pretty brief, to be honest with you. There wasn't too much going on with them, which I think was their way to create some sort of an equitable approach to hiring or selecting, which was interesting because there were no interviews, which I thought was really interesting, that we were somewhat going to serve as spokespeople at this event, but no interview. So I thought it was really interesting the angle they decided to take this. And then a month later, after I submitted the second application, I did receive the email that I was accepted. So that was really exciting. It was
Wow, I
it was
bet.
yeah, like I feel like time stood still in a way when I first received it, because it felt like I was just kind of in just immersed in reading the email, and everything was moving around me. You know, like a feeling where everything's moving, like you're at a standstill in a way, but a good one. And so, I was incredibly excited. My family was excited. It didn't really hit me till later that I was actually going to the White House. I think it was actually like I went to the White House in May, because that was when the forum was, and I met all the other youth advocates, and it was a great event. Like, it was really just a dialogue, and 6 people were chosen to speak, because there were 30 of us, and 6 of us were selected to speak. I wasn't selected. They already chose certain people, but it was great to kind of be involved in this event, but also like hear their stories and know that this event, in my opinion, was a little symbolic of where we're moving towards in the future. And we don't know what government or politics is going to bring to us. We never really know. Um, if they're going to bring about mental health change or mental health policies. But I think that hosting the conversation was broadcasted to many news channels. That's just like a symbol, right? Of like, this is happening. The conversations are happening. And even if not a lot comes out from the forum, which I think it will though, but you never know. But I think that, just that conversation happening is very important and valuable and significant for people who maybe are experiencing mental health conditions or mental health symptoms or problems or issues, and hearing people speak so vulnerably about their mental health and just mental health on, even just not even mental health, but everything. Because, everything is going to impact mental health, but to see people speaking on a national stage so vulnerably about their background, their experiences, it goes beyond mental health, and just how to be generally, how to be more vulnerable in your life, and how to invite others to be vulnerable, and also how to be receptive and respectful to others' space and their when they are vulnerable. So great opportunity, and that was kind of what I got to experience. I was almost going to say last year, but no, it happened in May of 2022. It's almost going to be last year because we're almost in January. But yeah.
That's awesome. And yes, getting the conversation started. That's why I started my podcast, because I want to be a mental health advocate.
Hmm.
And I myself, since I started talking about it, I was like, you know what? Let me do a mental health evaluation. Boy, did I learn a lot about myself.
Mm.
Severe depression, severe to moderate anxiety, bipolar, PTSD because of trauma, ADHD symptoms because of trauma, codependency, and anger issues. So when I talk about mental health issues and struggles, I speak about it because of myself and
Hmm.
what I've seen around my family and
Yeah.
things like that. So when somebody wants to talk about mental health, I'm like, yep, come on my podcast and let's have the conversation so people don't feel alone.
Yeah. And I think that is the common strand of how people feel when it comes to mental health, that they're alone. But when you look at the stats of mental health, it impacts so many people. It really is not a community of a few people. It's a community of literally thousands upon millions. But I think we're in a certain kind of emotionally rigid society where it's kind of hard to kind of express your emotions. For some it's easier, for some it's not. And I think that hopefully we're moving away from that, where it is okay to kind of express your emotions and kind of be in tune with who you are and how you express yourself. Because I feel like that didn't happen for a long time. And again, you know, I feel like a lot of people suppress their emotions, and suppressing your emotions can lead to physiological damage. And it can lead you to be even more aggressive and even more emotional. So people who are avoiding their emotions, it's going to make them even more emotional. And if they keep avoiding, it's going to get even worse, to the point where you hear it, they explode, and it may not be in the most healthy way. and it could do severe damage to themselves or the people around them. So it's sad that people have to do that, but I hope that we can move forward where people can feel more comfortable being vulnerable with their emotions or finding ways to do so. Yeah.
Amen to that. I used to hold on everything and then have like major breakdowns.
Mm.
And my last panic attack was in January of this year. And I have been a lot more calmer. And then after the mental health evaluation, I was able to give myself grace and have more compassion for what I'm going through. Because then I was able to see it as if a friend came to me with the same mental health diagnosis, I will be so loving, so caring, non-judgmental.
Mhm.
And with me, that's a different story.
Yeah.
You know, how you treat yourself.
Yeah. For some reason, we can treat ourselves worse than other people. And I think that it's a very normal thing for people to do, that we want to take care of the people around us, even strangers. We may be kinder to strangers than we are ourselves. My goodness. And so what does that really tell us about how we feel about ourselves? I'm not going to say we necessarily hate ourselves. Granted, there are people that hate themselves, and I think it's a very sad thing. I feel like so many people want to take care of the others around them, even be kind to strangers rather than be kind to themselves. And it's like we value strangers and people we barely know somewhat. We value them a little more than we do ourselves. Like, how sad is that? I'm not saying that's everyone's experience, but I think it's a lot of people's experiences from what I've heard and what I know. And even myself, we are polite to other people, we're kind to other people. Not everyone, but a lot of people,
Yeah.
not everyone, of course, but I think a lot of people are. But but at the end of the day, they're not kind to themselves, and just shows how we view ourselves in this world. And it's sad. I think we can move away from that. Not away from being kind to others, but having a balance between being kind to yourself and other people. If you treating other people how you treat yourself, you know what I mean? So if you're fairly kind to others and you're generous, be generous to yourself somehow.
I'm just learning that I'm like a year and a half on self-love journey.
Hmm.
So I'm work in progress when it comes to being kinder to myself and things like that. But yeah, anything else that you would like to share with my listeners?
Well, I do want to share that, even though I'm speaking on this, everyone is a work in progress. I don't think we're always going to be at that ultimate self-love. I think there are some people that have this inner peace with themselves, but it's taken a very, very long time, very long time. And
Mm-hmm.
even like some of the most spiritual leaders have had traumatic stories, have had traumatic stuff happen to them. And it's just like they have found inner peace to cope with it and move forward. But we can't move away from tragedy or trauma. I mean, stuff like this will happen. And so it's about having those tools and the care for yourself to feel better about everything. Um, that's what I think. I think that self-love and self-care are the goals, but it's something that we're always working on. And it makes sense that we're always working on it because, like I said, it feels like that we don't really live in a culture of self-care, self-love, and that we care about the others more around us. So since we have kind of habitually created this mindset that we have, it's going to take a long time to kind of wrap your brain around it and kind of rewire what you've kind of known for a long time. So if people are experiencing distress and they're like, even if for years they're trying to work on self-care, self-love, and it's not working, it's not about the destination. Of course, it's always about the journey. We always hear that. But I think
Mm-hmm.
self-love and self-care, it makes sense because people think of self-love and self-care as here's the point, the final point of where you're going to be. But self-love, self-care is just this bottled mess. And some days you feel good about yourself, some days you don't. But if you have those fundamentals down and you have that vision of how you feel about yourself, sure, there are days that are going to hurt they're going to hurt more. But if you can have that confidence and that support and preservation for yourself and your emotions, you'll feel better in the long run. But it's not a miracle 0 to 100. You're always going to be moving back and forth. And that's kind of the reality of mental health as well as self-care and self-love. which is the hard thing to tell people. But I don't think mental health or any of this stuff is linear. Like I said, you can have the tools, but sometimes you are very emotional, and sometimes those thoughts of suicide do come back. But as long as you have tools to deal with it, I think is the most important thing. But I don't think they ever go away, from my experience.
Yeah, no, I know it is. And with changes too. And growing, I'm not the same person I was when I was in my 20s. Now that I'm in my 30s, so I have to start learning and loving this new Francie that I'm creating as I get older.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you have so many amazing things on the on your profile. You have
Yeah.
accomplished a lot in such a short amount of time.
Thank you. No, thank you so much. Yeah, I appreciate you letting me be on your podcast. I think I kind of ended where I wanted to. I don't know if I have anything else, unless you had other questions.
No, oh, do you have, since this is in January, to have a word for the year? Do you do
A,
that?
a
A
word for the
word?
year?
Yeah.
A word for the year. Transformation. How about that?
I
I
love
think
it.
I think transformation. Well, I think transformation makes sense for a lot of people, but for me specifically, I'm going to say that because not only is the job, I'm doing it remotely right now, but I am actually going to be moving to DC in a couple weeks. So my first time moving and kind of living on my own in a way. So transformation there, new job. So a lot of transforming. So I think that's going to be the thread of 2023 for me.
Oh my God, 2023. I can't even, like, it shocked me when you said it.
Yeah, feels weird.
That's awesome though. And I wish you like nothing but the best in this new journey.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to another episode. Hope you enjoyed this interview as much as I did. Hope you have a blessed day.